What is our purpose today? What are we talking about? What are we doing?
Christianity.
Christianity. Now, do you need to learn the basics of Christianity? Probably not. Probably not. Wouldn't hurt to review them. But remember, on the other 5 religions, we just barely scratched the surface. With Christianity, we're going to go about it a little differently. It's going to seem a little elementary, but it's going to focus more on the comprehensive purpose of our faith than it is about the do's and don'ts and that sort of thing, because that's really not what we're about. So with your blessing, can't go wrong with starting with the word of prayer. Okay, so let's pray. Dearest God, you are greater than our understanding and higher than our highest thought. Along with our neighbors of various backgrounds, Lord, we look for answers for our lives and the things that we just don't understand. And those things that we do understand. Thank you, God, for your revelation of yourself in and for his message of a new love. Because you loved us, that is the reason that we seek to love others. Amen. We're going to start out talking about something that seems elementary. And you kind of notice that there's a blank sheet in the middle of the room. It'll make a little more sense in a few minutes. But I think I shared this in a sermon not too long ago, and I realize that all of you are not of the denomination called Whiteside Chapel. But this does not belong to a person. It's been said by many a person that, and I think it went back when I quoted it, I believe the earliest may have been Augustine. That sounds about right, in the 4th century. Anyway, that if you're asked to summarize Christianity, kind of blow your mind, wouldn't it? Unless you realize, as many theologians and scholars and Christian leaders have, that John 3:16 is the perfect summary of the gospel. Why do you think this verse is so useful in helping us understand the basics of Christian faith? I mean, it seems kind of odd for someone to say that just this one little verse, thank you, is going to tell me everything I need to understand about Christianity. I want you to think about that, because this idea is really going to be the foundation for our whole session today. We talked about this earlier, and I know you remember. There are 4 basic questions that everybody asks. They may ask them in different ways because of language and culture, but all people, regardless of religious background, ask these 4 questions. And I'm not going to ask you to tell me what they are, because I know that it's been a while since we talked about them. And I need to say something else, just so you know. I did a little guide for last week for Judaism, and you don't need it till the end. It's a little crude because it's kind of just a compilation of my notes and things, so it's not written worried about grammar or typing or anything like that, but I thought you might like to have that as you go out today. These 4 questions. What do you think the very first thing a person would want to know when they're old enough to just think, and they're feeling very much alone in the world? Does anybody love me? The first question, or one of the 4 questions, is, am I loved? We all want to know that. In fact, we're looking for validation of that so often, and we don't even realize it. That even when we know it, we really want validation that we are loved. I'll take a little side trip for a minute, but William Glasser, who wrote Schools Without Failure, is a psychiatrist that I just adored, and I got to study with him 100 years ago. His big thing in his books was that you only need 2 things to survive. You want one person to love you unconditionally. One, but it has to be unconditional. And you have to feel that you have some kind of purpose, that there's something you can do, that you have some ability or whatever. And if you look in our prisons and you look at some of the other just heartbreaking situations, one or both of those, I've experienced this as a principal, one or both of these is always missing. Does that make sense? I'm loved by a lot of people, but not unconditionally, right? And you are too. Yeah. Everybody.
I don't think anybody probably loves us unconditionally.
Yeah, that's pretty hard, isn't it? I will love you no matter what in this world you do or say or whatever. That's hard. And so if you have one, that's great. And we would probably say that's probably our mother or our father, very likely, but it's different people. And the other thing is, look around this room. Without asking, I know that every one of you have had some successes with at least one thing in your life. Say I'm right. You've been good at doing at least one thing. And if I said, what are you best at, or what have you been best at in your whole life, some of you would have a hard time deciding because you've done several things. You've been an unusually good mother, or you've been an unusually good manager of the house, or you've been an unusually good CPA, or, we could go on and on, but not in this session. And that's part of the reason that we all are gathered here today, because we still have that sense that we have a purpose in this world. Well, the number 2 question is there a purpose to life? Do you think we all ask that in different ways?
Well, you hope there is.
Yes. And if you feel like there isn't, wouldn't you act differently?
Well, those are the folks that commit suicide.
Yeah. Nothing matters. I'm going to live this drudgery, ain't got much money, ain't got a decent house, ain't got a decent job, and eventually I am going to die, so might as well get it over with. Or, worse than that, take it out on other people. The third question we ask is, can we or can we not be forgiven? I think that's an interesting question. I believe the only reason it's human to ask that is that I believe that God has put this God-sized, God-shaped hole in us, that every human is drawn to this idea that there's something better, something higher, that controls them or is in charge of them, and they want to be in sync with that force. Does that make sense? Okay, and 4, is there hope? And some of you have listened to me chatter way too much the last 3 years. I believe hope is the most powerful word in the world. The minute you get this much hope, you're a new person. I've seen people that thought they weren't going to graduate, and suddenly they had a plan that if they would do da-da-da-da-da, and they went from just balled up to just people that had no money at all, had lost a job, had been weeks without a job, just a good reference to go for an interview. Are you with me? A little bit of hope. You've got an illness, and the doctor says, but I found something I want you to try. I've heard good things. What does that give you? A little bit of hope. And you come a lot closer to getting up and trying when you have that little bit of hope. That's sort of been my experience. Sometimes I get almost silly or giddy with the hope of things that might be, and I have to kind of calm myself down. Well, I do believe, and don't correct me right now if I'm wrong, but I do believe that we know John 3:16 very well. But that's okay, because today we're going to unpack it and get to know it even better than you could ever have imagined. We're going to begin with an exercise just to help us remember what it says. Now, I need 4 volunteers: Sylvia, Shirley, Virginia, and Ted. Is that 4? Yeah. If you all will come up here.
Do we brace up there or do we hang back?
You can stand any way you want to. You just got kind of. Okay. I'm going to hand you a card, and you just kind of keep it like it is to your body. Where's the 4th person? Somebody chickened out. Virginia?
Gina.
Gina.
Gina. Why do I call you Virginia? I like that name. Is that okay? Come on. I think we should call you by your real name. Oh, my goodness.
I thought you pointed at me.
Insurrection.
That's all right, we will work with you. This is not, you four just kind of hold cards really for the most part, so now if you put that up to your tummy, that would be good. Okay, now if you hold them to you and turn around to your friends. Now, in just a second, you're going to turn the cards around, and I want to see how quickly you can put yourselves in the right order so that the verse makes sense.
It's a bad line out there.
Read them and see which order they should be in.
No.
You can turn them around now.
First.
They got ourselves in order?
You're second.
Yes, get yourselves in order.
Okay.
My last. You're second.
When you think you're in order, let me know that you're ready.
Okay,
Okay? All right, which end are we starting on?
here.
That's the first verse. Okay, let's all read these verses from Ted on down and see if it does in fact sound right.
For God so loved the world.
That he gave his only begotten Son. Is that what's next?
That whosoever believeth in him should not perish.
That's not the next part.
Switch.
That's okay.
I'm a little confused.
See?
Absolutely.
And this is the thing, we can do it. Okay, let's try again. Everybody reading together?
For God so loved the world.
That he gave his only begotten Son.
That whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life.
Do we agree that this is the correct verse for John 3:16? It is, it is. Now, Ted, if you will give me your card, you other three can hold on to them for a second and just have a seat. I think that'll be fine. And I'll just come to you. That'll be fine. Now, you heard me say that Ted could give me his card. And what position was Ted in?
God.
Well, let's not elevate it too much. He's a nice man. Yeah, he was number one. He was number one. He's number one. Okay, so who wants to tell me what this card says?
God so loved the world.
Everybody agree?
Yeah.
Say it with me.
For God so loved the world.
Okay, you've got the first card memorized. Because we're not going to leave till everybody can say it from heart, by heart. And I know you can easily, just remember it. For God so loved the world. Okay. Now, we're going to, actually I need the other cards, I'm sorry, that's okay. We're going to divide up into groups and talk about something because this verse says, for God so loved. Yes, we're going to talk about love. We're going to talk about God and we're going to talk about love because you can't really separate one from the other. And we're going to find out a little bit more today, hopefully internalize a little bit more what that means. We're going to look at two words. In the scripture, there is a word, lost my notes, but that's okay, I'll make it up. There are two words, and one of them I think is going to be familiar to you, and it's called agape. Even if you've forgotten what agape love is, you've probably heard a preacher or Sunday school teacher, somebody say that somewhere along the line. Now, the other word is spelled C-H-E-S-E-D. How might one pronounce that?
Chesed?
Say it again.
Chesed?
Chesed. I was thinking biblically, so I thought, well, there's blessed. Maybe it could be chest. Guess how you pronounce it? Remember, it's a Hebrew word.
Should not be any consonants in it.
It's almost like it's got a K, but it's got that little guttural S. As the pronouncer said, if you don't spit on somebody, you haven't said it right. That's very interesting, and I think that's good to know. But both of these words have to do with being translated as mercy, steadfast love, or loving kindness. And they can be translated in various ways. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide in two groups. We got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. Worked out pretty well. Sarah and Ted, that was split right there. So if you all just scoot a little bit, I don't want you to have to move much. But you're going to be talking about Cassidy. And this side is going to talk about agape. Now, the next problem is you're going to need a Bible. And nobody has their Bible. Right here? Yeah. Yeah. Psalm, Numbers, oh my goodness. This just isn't going to work without Bibles. Well, I know a way that it can. You still keep your hats on. You're thinking Cassidy, and you're thinking agape. And I will just be you. Okay? I will just be you. Except sadly, because it will take a little time, but I'll try to be as proficient as my little old fingers will go. Okay. All right, the first recommendation they had for Cassidy was Numbers 14, verse 19.
Reflect you in the Old Testament.
Yes, Numbers. Numbers 14, verse 19. 17, 18 is coming. Please forgive the wrongs of these people because of your absolute loyalty, just as you've forgiven these people from their time in Egypt until now. Who do you think would be saved? Let me say it again because I've seen it before you've seen it. Please forgive the wrongs of these people, because of your absolute loyalty, just as you've forgiven these people from their time in Egypt until now. Does it sound like these people aren't doing so well? And these people are actually the same people that came from Egypt, and they ain't never done that well. And who has forgiven and been loyal to them all the way? So who might entreat God to continue with that loving loyalty? Who's the dude that went up the mountain?
Moses.
I would say this is Moses saying, "Now come on, God, I know you're mad. I know you're upset. You have every right to be. But Lord, you are what? Slow to anger," even though he didn't use those exact words, slow to anger, filled with loving kindness. And look at what all you've put up from these people. And you've loved them and cared for them and stayed with them. So what does that have to do with Cassidy? With love. What kind of love then would Cassidy love? Would it be merciful?
Unconditional.
Would it be unconditional? Pretty much. But it would be a love that says, I will forgive. I will stay with you. I will be merciful. How many times have we said in different words, Lord, have mercy on me, because other than that, I'm doomed, right? Everybody's been there at least once. And it doesn't matter if your situation didn't sound that bad to somebody else. It was bad for you. All right, let me flip over to Psalm 12. You know, you should not judge other people. And this is not judgmental, but it's heartbreaking. It's sad. Just like when someone stands up in front of the nations and says 1 Corinthians. But this person was on Jeopardy the other night. And they asked a question. And it had to do, anyway, it led this person to think the answer was J-O-B. And she answered job. Doesn't that kind of break your heart? It does. It's kind of broke down. But then I'm strange.
Steve Jobs pronounces his name Job, so that might have been what she was thinking.
No. It turned out, and I thought the person that was handling the stage or whatever handled it nicely. But, you know, again, it hurts me that she did not know that. mother would say, it's knowing just enough to be dangerous. Okay, Psalm 103. Oh, darn. Just this once, you're the light of my life. Okay, Psalm 103, verse 8. And then I'm going to let you all help out, so we can speed up. Here's 103, verse 8.
John
Yeah.
36.
The Lord,
Wait a minute, what did you say?
I said, just hold on, and I'm going to go ahead and read this one, and then we're going to pick up and help each other with the others. The Lord is compassionate and merciful, very patient, and full of faithful love. Does that sound like the things we just said about the other verse from Numbers? I think it does. There's that merciful word again. And I think the point here is for us to realize that the idea of God being a God of mercy, that His love is merciful. I mean, you don't want someone to, oh, I love you to death, I love you, I love you, I love you, but, oh, well, you get your own chair, I'm not doing that for you. Yeah, because I'm silly. You know, you want someone that demonstrates their love. It's not just saying it. So God demonstrates His mercy, which is His love. And it's all through the Bible, from the beginning in Numbers as we go on through. Now, listen somewhat carefully. I'm going to have Sylvia, and you've got something right with Matthew 5, 43 through 46. And Shirley,
43 to 46.
Matthew 22, verses 37 through 39. Okay? And Tom, how about 1 John, or 1 John, if you like it that way, 1 John, chapter 4, verses 7 through 10. And we're going to give them just a second or two to find their passages. And then they're going to read for us. And we're going to be looking again for those words that are descriptive of God, specifically God's love.
Here it is.
Yeah, we don't have many choices on size of text. So if your arms aren't long enough, get somebody else to help you.
Matthew 5.
Okay? Who got Matthew 5? Is that you, Sylvia?
I've got it.
Okay, let's listen carefully.
43.
She'll use her teacher voice.
46. You have heard that it hath been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father, which is in heaven. For He maketh His sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust.
That's a verse that we all find very interesting.
One more.
I'm sorry.
I didn't have to
Yeah, that's okay.
out there. For if you love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the publicans the same?
We don't particularly like that verse, do we? Some people pass over it. Some people would choose, I guess if they're literal readers of the Bible, they would choose to say, well, it doesn't really mean what it says. I think it's pretty clear, especially when Jesus goes on to explain what he means. Why would Jesus say such a thing if it wasn't straight from God the Father? He wouldn't, would he? At least I don't believe he would.
I hope you do.
Exactly. So if in fact this is the word of God for the people of God coming through Jesus, what does it say about God's love? He wants us to have the kind of love he has. So what kind of love is it in that passage, Sylvia?
Agape.
Right, it's agape. And it means that you will have love for
People I don't care for.
And that's a concept that I think modern Americans and many modern people, maybe Westerners, maybe not all Westerners, would have a problem with. Because when we think of love, L-O-V-E, we tend to think romantically or intimately, like with our closest children, our closest friends. Do you tell your best friends that you love them? I do too. I think
Don't
it's a
tell
good
the
thing.
enemies.
I do not.
I do not.
I do not. And that's not good. But on the other hand, I know what I mean when I say to my best friends and my daughter and my husband and my sister and others, I love you. And I say it too often to you. I sign my cards a lot of times. God loves you and so do I. Because I know what I mean, that is truly a love. It's not a romantic love, but it is a true love. But this love means to care for them and to want good for them and to not want bad for them. It's more about caring and compassion. So what kind of love does God have? It's merciful.
Unconditional.
It's unconditional because your enemies do some pretty bad stuff. At least they certainly seem to us. And he's saying, don't react to that. Remember, they're my children and I love them and you must love them, even if you don't like them. So we've seen that God's merciful, he's loyal, he is unconditional. There's nothing we can do to break our covenant with God.
He's
And that-
honest. He's honest.
Honest, interesting. That is a good way to put it. Because if he tells us something today and then he changes it tomorrow, that isn't honest, is it? And we see that every day in modern life. Oh, you didn't read the fine print. Or, oh, you didn't know what I meant by that. You know, that's not God. That's not God. All right. We could talk about that for a long time because loving your enemies, I pray about this. I probably have committed a lot of disobedience. I know I have. Probably that's way up at the top of the list, is having negative thoughts about people that have been ugly to other people and have been ugly to me. And I just don't do well with that, you know? So pray for me. Pray for me. Matthew 22.
Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it, Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself.
And basically Jesus says that this is the sum of the gospel. Here it is. Here's the thing, you know? Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. How often do we say that? And how often do you hear that in worship?
A lot of times.
A lot of times, about $1 for every time we say it. We say it all the time.
And it goes in one ear and out the other.
It can, and also it comes, sometimes it just rattles off the tongue almost too easy. And then, sometimes we never get to rule 2. But if we do, we say, and love your neighbor as yourself. Yeah. But we really don't think about what that means. Because when we see someone in trouble, what is the typical thought? Think about it. You see someone in trouble. What is your first thought? Oh, bless their heart. What happened to them? Or, oh my word, I wonder what they did.
What were they doing at that time of night?
You see a car wreck. Oh, I wonder who caused this wreck. And so I slow down, and if there's a police officer, I roll down the window and I say, do you need a preacher? And then I keep going. But our thought should be, what harm has been done, and is there any way we can help? And that's not our first thought. When something bad happens, you turn on the TV, and it's going to happen in the next week or so. We're not going to be around to see it. There are going to be storms. There's going to be damage. And when you see people's houses destroyed, you're not going to say it. You're not going to think it because you're better than a lot of people. But someone next to you or someone in the apartment next door is likely to think and even say out loud, well, what were they doing living in that area? Have we heard that before?
What did they do to certain things?
Well, I don't know that I've ever thought that, but I have honestly thought, and Chuck and I have been talking about it, you know, the hurricanes come through there 18 times for 18 years. I'm exaggerating. I just believe I would be looking for somewhere else to go. Is that being judgmental? Or is that being merciful and loving?
That's been awful.
I don't know. Because it's a lot easier to judge somebody else's situation, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, my goodness. So in this verse, Shirley, we see that God wants us to be like God. And if we are, then we're not going to love anyone more than we love Him, God, and we're going to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. So I think of what I want for myself. If it gets right down to it, you want a safe place to live, a nice, comfortable place to live. You want good food that you have some control over. You want some pleasure, some entertainment, and you want some companionship. Is there any reason you wouldn't want that for everyone?
You want them to have it, but you don't want to have to get it for them.
We have conditions. Thank God, God doesn't have conditions.
Thank goodness.
But I'm supposed to be like God. Ooh, I gotta live a long time, because I've got a lot of work to do. Okay, now, what you were going to do next is to write a definition of each of those terms. Let's just do this collectively due to time. What do you think the focus on the chesed love was? What were those words we kept hearing the most? Mercy, and just loyalty. I'm here with you. It's going to be okay. Your God's always going to be here with you. Or my children are going to choose to always be there with you. When we got to agape, it got a little bit more serious maybe, but it didn't get any less important. In agape, what did we hear? Easy love, hard love.
Hard.
I think the chesed love is hard, isn't it? To always be merciful and loyal. But the agape love people that would want to kill you. You know? You hear that, somebody's going to try to kidnap you and lock you up and maybe kill you. And then you get freed and everything's fine and you go, okay, I understand. I don't think that was a good thing and I'm very upset with you, but I'm going to forgive you.
It doesn't sound like anybody's going to be in heaven.
It sounds like it's not going to be as full as we think. Yes. I believe the old African expression is wonderful. Everybody talking about heaven ain't going. Everybody talking about heaven ain't going.
But we don't like curves, so.
Well, there's one reason that heaven might be more fun-filled and joy-filled than we might think. Because what kind of love does God have? Chesed and agape. And without that, we ain't got a chance. So how wonderful to know that we have the privilege and the call to try to learn and adopt those two ways of loving people. What a challenge. But it came from the man. It came from the head guy. So we can't go. Okay, 1 John 4.
For says, ye are God's little children, and have overcome them, because great is he that is in you, that is he that is in the world. That's 4.
What words did you pick up on in there that relate to love?
That's 7.
They're God's little children.
We're God's children. What do you say? Read it again for me.
Okay. Ye are of God little children, and have overcome them, because great is he that is in you, that he that is in the world.
That almost sounds like the how-to, doesn't it? We've walked through these types of love and said, there ain't no way. But who's in us? Who's within us, in John? What does he say? Who do you think he's talking about?
God is in.
God is in us, just as he's in the world. And if God's in us, we have a fighting chance. But we have to remember God's in us, and we have to let God do his work with us. So that's another story for another day. All right, folks, we've got a problem. And I think you already know what it is. We're just about through the beginning, the opening of the lesson. and it's a good lesson. In my opinion, it is a good lesson. What we needed to do, and what we were going to do, was look at our 4 other religions, do a quick review of their great whatever their great works were that they followed, and a few of their basic beliefs, and see how they agree and disagree with Christianity. And then just a couple of other things. But to do that well, that will take some time. And it is already 10 till 5. So, I mean, I can stay here till 6 o'clock, but I'm not gonna ask you all to do that.
We'd rather meet more times, aren't we?
Yeah, and that's always been my problem, you know, and I admit it, it's okay. Because any lesson we do, there is so much rich stuff to get out of it. And I always want you to get your money's worth, so. I'm gonna share just a few things, and then I'm going to recommend, and I need for you to speak up and say, we don't really care enough to do that. I'm gonna recommend that whatever you say, if you say you wanna go ahead and do it soon before you forget everything, like in early July, that's fine, but I would like for us to have at least one more session to put some bows and tie these things together. Does anybody else want to do that, or is it just me?
Yeah. Don't have to have more than an hour, though.
Well, we might decide to have 90 minutes, and then if we don't need it, that's fine. But it's important to not just hit, you know, just, because when you do that in school, they come back, they've got a clue what you said, right? Yeah, because you tried to get it in so fast. How would you feel about going ahead and doing that maybe the second week of July? Before we've all just, who does and what? Would that be okay? Maybe a Monday at 4, since that seems to be a time that we're adjusted
As
to.
long as somebody reminds us.
Oh, I will send you more emails than you want. But I'll pick a date, I'll send it out and get your blessing.
Yeah, I'd rather do that than try to rush through it tonight.
Yeah, even if I tried to cram it in 10 minutes. No, this is pretty meaty stuff. But the good thing is, you're gonna come back better prepared, because you've got your little booklets and your notes and things, and you know we're going to be talking about, well, what were the great books or works that the Hindus used? What were the great books that the Buddhists used, you know? And if we do that right now, there's gonna be a lot of staring at you. I know there is.
That's right.
Because you didn't come with some of that in your head. Okay, well, with that said, I do want to share a little bit more. Not so you'll get your money's worth, but just because, and the other thing is, as we go, we're putting these cards up on this blank wall so that we get the John 3:16. So we haven't finished with that really. So much good stuff. Let's put this one up. Let me talk just a little bit, and maybe Chuck can give a signal or something, because I'll go on and on. I love this, the human condition, and that's at the root of all this. John 3:16, a summary on the Christian gospel. That's the fact that God acted to save us. Now, remind each other again, why did God need to save us? He created us and we were His people. How did we get in such a mess?
We followed our own will.
Exactly. From day one. Do we know what day one was? Not really. But from the beginning, where God could see the relationship, and I'll leave that to God to understand. And people did not look toward God, whatever their understanding of God was, but looked to their own being. So that's when things started. And the problem with our human nature is human sin and brokenness. And Christianity takes an honest look at humanity and surmises that there's something wrong with us. Now, there's a big debate. My first degree was in sociology and anthropology. People have been arguing for centuries about, are people naturally good and they do bad things, or are they naturally bad and they do good things? But Christians would say that we think there's something basically wrong with us in the fact that we do tend to be focused on things that are not of God. There are people that think that's all we talk about, sin, right? And some of our brothers and sisters, some of you may be in denominations or in churches that is the major focus. But to not acknowledge it would be to not acknowledge the whole purpose that our faith sprung from God coming down to provide this opportunity for us, because He said, I'm going to do what I said I'd do. He's honest. He said, if you sin and don't do what I've told you to do, then you're going to have a human death. Before that, we're in paradise, they couldn't live forever. You're going to have a human death.
It'll be awful full, wouldn't it?
He did not go back on his word. We do die, human death, don't we? Do you think that made God happy?
Probably not.
Have you said things with your children, and later you're like, oh man, I wish I hadn't said that. And parents do one of two things. They back up. Never do that. Or they stick it out and just hate it. You know, they just say, that's why I say to parents, you tell him he's going to be grounded for 3 months. That's insane. Don't say things like that. So anyway, God kept his word that we would have a human death, but he wanted to help us. He kept seeing how bad we were.
He liked our company.
You hit it right on the head. That's why he made us, for relationship. And you can't have a relationship with people that are doing everything against what you've asked them to do. Exactly. But that is one of the dominant themes with Christianity. We believe that we're created in God's image. And that means that there's much goodness in us, probably the most goodness. And we have the capacity to love people and be selfless, kind, and just. And Christianity also knows that for all the good in us, evil is always close at hand. Do you believe that? When you leave here in the next 2 hours, would you have any opportunity to do something that you just assume God didn't know about? Probably.
Yeah.
It could be something like just tripping over a hose and not being proud of the way you react to it. Is that put nicely enough? Yeah, well, those opportunities are just there. Sometimes I think it's ready to get me. I have a friend, and I won't use the word, but many of you probably know him. I know Sarah knows him, and I won't say his name, but he'd tell you if he was here. And he's even older than I am. And he retired about 5 years ago. And good pastor, good-hearted man, and he just looks like your father. He just looks so pastoral. And he talks about the time that he went into a strange pulpit. And when he did, something happened and something fell and hit his foot. And he said, oh. And fortunately, the mic was not where it picked it up. I prayed to God that many things would not come my way. And I had not prayed about that one. I added that to the list. We are all this close to doing something that we would regret forever. You know?
Well, so the devil is always in your back.
Yes, yes. Whether you think the devil's like in the form of a person or just this osmosis of temptation. And how do we know that? Okay, think about it. Some of you have new grandchildren or great-grandchildren, and you can remember your own child or children. When Elizabeth was born, I thought she was perfect. I thought she was a saint for a couple minutes. And then they start screaming, crying. There's some crying that's kind of cute and sweet, but there's some crying that you just think, oh man. That's got to
awful mad.
It does, it makes you think you can't stand it. Why are they crying? Because they want something. Now, does that mean that we taught them to be greedy, to want? No, it's natural. But very quickly that goes to wanting more than they should, or being given more than they should. You understand what I'm saying? I don't want to go too much into that, do I?
They want a clean diaper.
Yeah, they want a clean diaper, yeah.
If we were in that situation, we would too.
Exactly. Now, see, that's what's so good is when you start to look at it from the other person's perspective. Because when you're dead tired, you've worked about 16 hours and that baby's screaming and screaming and you haven't eaten all day and blah, 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 you're not necessarily thinking about it from their perspective, and poor little innocent baby. But this has been our history. And when I say our history, because I see us as a branch of the family of Israel. And from Israel's beginning with Abraham. What did we say before? I think I said this Sunday. It was a history of making covenants with God
And break them.
breaking them, making them, and breaking them. When did things go well for the Israelites? When they were keeping the covenant or when they were breaking it?
When they were keeping it.
When they were keeping it. You'd think that we would have caught on by now, don't you? When we do the right thing, it's almost impossible to regret it. Think about it. Have you ever done something when your head said, I need to do this, but I do not want to do it? I really need to go and say this to this person, or I need to go and visit this person, but they won't go well. They don't like me, and I just don't want to go. But you go. You never regret it. You never regret it. Because you've done the right thing. You've done this thing, not this thing. But what happens down in the valleys? Woe is me. It ain't good. People are killing me. All these armies are coming. They're chopping at our families. It's awful. And suddenly we go, remember God? And they come back crawling to God and say, please, we will do better. Why does God let them come back?
That's his nature.
Bingo. That's his nature. God is pure love. What kind of love? Merciful, loyal, caring.
For everyone.
For everyone, no matter how hateful they can be. Because God is the source that really believes with all God's heart that I can be a perfect person. That people all over the world can be perfect people. He believes that because he knows it. He knows it can happen. And he also knows that it's not going to happen anytime soon with most of us. But he knows that it can.
I almost think he's almost going to give up on time.
That's right, he's not going to give up. That's another African-American song. They were playing it the day I was commissioned as a local pastor. And I knew it before then, but when I marched up with that line outside of the, oh gosh, honey, I've forgotten the name of those.
Stewart Auditorium.
Yeah, the auditorium. They were singing, he never failed me, he never failed me yet, da-da-da-da, he never. You don't remember anything else about God. He has never failed us. We failed him and we failed ourselves. And sometimes we pin the failure on God.
You want to blame it on somebody.
Exactly. If we can find somebody to blame. Moses, same scenario. David committed adultery. Bathsheba. Some of us thought he needed to get really punished. That was our perspective. Peter denied Jesus. Can you imagine? After just having dinner with Jesus, saying, I don't know him. We better believe it because we know that our human nature can cause that and pray that it's not true. Sin has consequences. Some people want to focus that sin has consequences 2 more minutes on the fact that we'll go to hell. Have you noticed that? That a lot of places is don't sin or you'll go to hell. If you sin, you're going to go to hell. It's a lot more complicated than that in most of our minds. And the good news is I think it's a lot better than that. Because if we don't sin, we get eternal life and heavenly life right now. It starts. And it goes and just gets better and better. With that note, I want us to pray the closing prayer together. And we're going to come back with the idea of love, God's love, and how it's summed up in John 3:16, and how it's seen in these other religions, and how it's not seen. Okay? Is that good enough for our homework? Okay. I wrote the prayer in your booklet because it's personal. And I'm going to give you a minute to look at it because you do not have to pray. If you don't feel comfortable praying this, you do not have to. What do you think? Well, before we do this, let me just say that I'll remind you, and those who are going to watch this on tape, I will not be in the building, I'll be in the state for that matter, until next Tuesday a week. But if you have a heartbreaking situation and you need prayer or you just need someone to talk to, my cell phone works everywhere and I expect you to use it. I don't expect you to just call me and say, let's talk about Bible study. I'm on vacation, but I do not want anyone in a situation where I could be of any help. And if you know about that, you let me know, okay? All right. Let's pray together. Thank you, God, for loving me. I accept your love. Help me to love you in return. Help me better to love my neighbors above the best. Jesus, I trust in you. Thank you for your life, for your teachings, for your death and resurrection. I accept your salvation. Forgive me, I pray, and help me to follow you. Holy Spirit, come and dwell in me. Fill me, shape me, and help me to live a life of love. Amen. That's one of many prayers that I have that I think would be worthy to pray every day. Well, guys, I want you to know God does love you, and I love you too. So I hope that you will be in good spirits, and I'll be seeing you, even though we won't be having a lot of phone meetings. I'll get an email out to you right after I get back and propose the time that we do. Put some polish on the rest of the stuff, okay? Thank you.
It will be fun.